spoilers for What If Season 1 up to Episode 7. I liked What If Episode 7. It wasn't my favourite, but it was a low-stakes fun episode, and everyone involved clearly had a hoot making it. But I did wonder one thing. If we're seeing a global party raging during the time the original Thor film was set, where's Tony Stark? Iron Man, the MCU's original playboy. Surely if any Earthling was going to join in with Party 4's debauched bacchanal, it would be this guy. So why wasn't he there? And unlike if this episode was live action, we can't chalk this omission up to actor availability or issues with pay. Mick Wingert voices Stark in What If, not Robert Downey Jr. So the decision to omit Stark from this story was a conscious one, made for the sake of a narrative. And I think I've figured out why this is. Tony Stark is dead. Let me explain. So, we can assume that this episode takes place during this universe's equivalent timeframe to the MCU primes during the 2011 Thor film. Jane Foster is in New Mexico researching, she's got Darcy as her intern, blah blah blah. But the reason this means anything is that, canonically, Thor 1, Iron Man 2 and The Incredible Hulk take place at roughly the same time. We saw this originally in a tie-in comic for the first Avengers film back in 2011 called Fury's Big Week, and we know that this is still canon because of what we see in an earlier episode of What If. Episode 3 is sort of a bizarro version of this story, in which the Avengers are all assassinated during this 1 week, but the important thing here is that these stories overlap, chronologically speaking. But how does that mean Iron Man dies? Jesus, I'm getting there, give me a moment. So while the Party Thor episode takes place at the same time as its MCU Prime counterpart, things clearly aren't identical. We learn that, this time, the data caused by Thor's interstellar parties has caused Jane to predict an alien invasion, instead of a mere astronomical phenomenon, and we learn that she has previously alerted the authorities to these predictions, even if it doesn't look like they've been receptive. But we also find out, after the Vegas party, that Nick Fury himself was in Vegas on the night of the party invasion. Hill and Coulson are there too. Let's flip back to the original timeline. While Coulson is in New Mexico during Thor, S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't get there straight away. It takes a while before they respond to Thor and Mjolnir's arrival, and we even see some of this in Iron Man 2. A lot of time passes between Tony's first tete-a-tete with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the moment Coulson gets reassigned to find the hammer. Factor in the time it takes him to get down there and set up shop, and well, S.H.I.E.L.D. being so punctual in What If suggests they were aware of this alien threat in advance. Maybe they'd actually heard Jane's warnings. I think this is the most likely way, but regardless, S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives on the scene way earlier than they do in the original timeline. And I can prove this. Let's think back to What If Episode 3, which tells us that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s meeting with Stark happened on a Monday, and that the S.H.I.E.L.D. base around Mjolnir is set up by Tuesday night. But originally, Thor and Mjolnir land the day behind this, so also on Monday. So since Fury shows up on the same night Thor does, this universe's S.H.I.E.L.D. is clearly more on top of things than the version we see in the original movie, where they're only investigating because of atmospheric and weather disturbances. Fury doesn't even bother to show up in the Prime timeline. Authority is delegated to Coulson. The fact that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s top dog is on the scene within hours shows us that S.H.I.E.L.D. was ready for aliens to show up, and moreover, that they had prepared for this eventuality, with their top command assigned to deal with this seemingly ahead of time, possibly due to hearing or intercepting Jane's predictions. And if S.H.I.E.L.D. was preparing for a possible alien invasion predicted to occur on this Monday, then I think it's reasonable to assume that this event would have been drastically more important to them than some boozed up playboy with palladium poisoning. I am, of course, talking about Iron Man. The events of the latter half of Iron Man 2 take place on Monday, the same day as Thor lands on Earth. So originally, Tony met up with Fury and Black Widow on this day, had his palladium problem temporarily solved, and then went on to figure out and synthesize a new element that wouldn't poison him, all with the help of S.H.I.E.L.D. And while the threat of an imminent alien invasion doesn't necessarily negate any S.H.I.E.L.D. involvement with this universe's equivalent to Iron Man 2, I do think it's fair to say that the big boss wouldn't be chatting with Iron Man a few hours before the Space Invaders touch down. And furthermore, I think it's likely that S.H.I.E.L.D. as a whole would have been dedicating fewer resources to Stark in the days or weeks leading up to this, which means probably no temporary palladium cure, and definitely no eye-opening chat with Fury about Tony's dad, which originally led Stark to figure out the puzzle of the new element. So, in this timeline, it seems like Tony's still poisoned, either mortally if he never got this shot, or just still pretty badly. Either way, he doesn't have long, especially if he tries to go and fight Vanko, just like he did in the original timeline. I doubt he wins this fight if his blood is also poisoning him. Maybe Vanko kills him, maybe not, but it looks to me like the reason we don't see Tony living it up in the Party Thor episode is because he's either dead or at death's door, either from Vanko or his palladium poisoning, because S.H.I.E.L.D. had their hands full with an imminent alien invasion, or so they thought. So yeah, maybe this episode was a little darker than you thought. Incidentally, this also means Ultron vision at the end is almost certainly from another timeline, not the future of this one. No Tony means no Ultron, after all. I mean, this is probably the case anyway, since Uatu didn't know this was happening either, but yeah, the proof's in the pudding, and this particular pudding happens to be dead Iron Man souffle. But tell me if you agree with this theory or not, and if you don't, why not? Also throw any predictions you have in the comments about where this Ultron vision comes from. It'll be interesting to come back in a few days and see if anyone got it right. But that's all from me for now. Hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and sub if you want to see more Marvel content, and I'll see you next time.